Welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time, we're going way back to Tudor England.
Ooh.
But not for the kings and queens and all the drama at court.
Mm.
We're focusing on the kids.
The children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was life actually like for them?
Yeah.
Everyday life. So,
Fun.
yeah, right. And to guide us, we've got this fantastic book, Tudor Children, by Professor Nicholas Orme.
A wonderful resource. And it's so easy, isn't it, to think of history as like battles and big events.
Right.
But it's really the stories of everyday folks that make it, come to life.
Yeah, and that's what he does so well.
He does.
Really dives into all those little details, and it's amazing what he's uncovered.
Right.
Like, you think about Tudor England, and you don't necessarily think, oh, wow, there were so many children.
Right.
But up to a quarter of the population.
Yeah, a quarter, at least, under the age of 14.
Yeah, under 14. That's a lot more than we see today.
A lot more.
So it really makes you think about just the whole feel, the vibe of what it would have been like to be there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Today, we tend to have much older populations.
Right.
But back then, like you said, children everywhere. It would have been a completely different world, wouldn't it?
It would. And even the concept of childhood itself, right? It wasn't just, you're under 18, you're a child,
Right.
It was much more...
It was like a journey.
Yeah.
They saw it in stages. Infancy, that was up to about 7. Then childhood was 7 to 14. But get this, adolescence, that could go all the way to 21, sometimes even 28.
Wow.
Yeah.
28.
And marriage was often what marked true adulthood.
Oh, okay.
So mid-20s.
So that's a far cry from how we think of it today.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. 25-year-olds still living at home, maybe learning a trade.
Right.
That wouldn't have been so unusual then.
No, not at all. It gives you a new perspective.
It does.
Doesn't it? On how we view things today.
Yeah, yeah. And while we're talking about things that are different, what about the names?
Oh, the names. Right. Some of them we still hear today.
Yeah.
John, William, Thomas, Mary, Elizabeth.
The classics.
Classics. But then the Reformation, right? Things started to shift.
The Reformation really, shook things up.
It did, including names.
Saints' names, they went out of fashion.
Yeah.
And parents started looking to classical literature.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you see names like Diana, Cassandra.
Very different.
Very different.
Yeah. But then on top of that, we have the Puritans.
Oh, yes.
Who came along and said, well, no, we need names that reflect virtue.
Right. So you have children being named Charity and Hope.
Right.
Or even things like...
Praise God.
Praise God, yeah. Zeal of the land.
Right. It really is a window, isn't it, into how society was changing at the time.
And so much variety. You can just imagine trying to keep track in historical records.
Right. Oh, so many Johns.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got all these little ones running around. What about childcare back then? Well, most advice, it was just passed down through generations, really. Mothers to daughters.
The oral tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding was pretty common, of course, but wealthier mothers.
Yeah, they had other options.
They did. They often hired wet nurses.
Yeah, the whole wet nurse system,
It's fascinating.
It is. Sometimes babies were sent away.
Yeah, to live with the wet nurse.
For a year or two.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think what kind of impact would that have had on the mothers and the children?
Oh, I mean, you have to wonder, right, about the emotional side of things.
Right.
So different from how we view, attachment and bonding today.
So different. And that contrast becomes even more stark, I think, when you consider just the sheer reality of childhood mortality back then.
It's a tough thing to think about.
It is.
17% of babies didn't make it past their first year.
Wow, and 30% died before adolescence.
Yeah.
It's hard to even imagine.
It is. It was just the reality of the time.
And, I've heard some historians say that parents must have just been, almost numb to it.
Yeah, you kind of think, well, how could you not be? But Professor Orme, he found letters, diaries, expressing grief, anxiety over sick kids.
So it really wasn't...
It wasn't that simple.
No.
There's even archaeological evidence that children with disabilities lived to adulthood.
Oh, wow. So they're being cared for.
They were. So it's a much more, I think, human...
Yeah, compassionate
view than we might have assumed.
But sadly, not all children were so lucky.
No. Many faced abandonment, especially in big cities like London.
Right. And you can imagine the pressure on a single mother.
Oh,
during that time.
Little support, huge stigma.
Right. Some would leave their babies on doorsteps, hoping
for the best.
For a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just heartbreaking.
It is. There were places like Christ Hospital that were established to care for these children, but
It's not the same.
no. Highlights just how vulnerable
Yeah.
children were and the need for support systems.
Yeah. Now, despite all of that, Professor Orman really challenges this notion, the idea
Right.
that Tudor children were just mini adults.
That they didn't have a childhood.
Yeah.
Right.
Just dressed up versions of their parents.
Right. Working alongside them.
Yeah.
No time for fun.
She says that's not
It's not the full picture.
right.
I mean, they did often dress like adults, but
Well, and we still do that today.
we do, right. Kids' clothes.
Right.
And yes, they had chores, helped with family work, but physically, their bodies,
They couldn't do the same.
no, they couldn't. They couldn't do adult labor until after puberty.
Right. So childhood is a biological fact.
It is. Even then, even in Tudor England, children had time to play.
To be children.
Yeah. And speaking of play, Professor Orm, he uncovers all these
Yeah.
fascinating details about the toys.
Right. It's like we get this glimpse into their toy chest.
We-
Like those miniature knights on horseback.
Yeah, tiny kitchenware.
Or in those cupboards.
Yeah, those cupboards are just incredible.
I know. So detailed.
Beautiful, often made of metal.
Yeah. It's like even the toys.
Reflect the craftsmanship.
Yeah. Of the time.
The era.
Yeah. But it wasn't all fancy metal objects, was it? They were pretty resourceful.
They were.
Turning everyday things into toys.
Right. Cherry stones became marbles. They
Yeah.
used lace ends, those little bits called haglets,
Oh, yeah?
as currency in games.
It's amazing. It reminds us, that play is really about the imagination,
It is.
not about having expensive things.
Exactly.
And it's so interesting to see which games have really stood the test of time.
Right.
Drafts, chess, even card games.
It's amazing.
Card games back then.
I know.
It really connects us, doesn't it,
It
to
does.
those who came before.
Yeah, yeah. Although I think some adults back then weren't too keen on card games.
Oh, really? Why not?
Well, they thought they could lead to gambling
Oh, okay, yeah.
and other vices.
Right.
Yeah.
Seen as a bad influence.
Yeah, a corrupting influence, some might say.
It's funny how some things never change.
They don't do that.
That push and pull between what kids want to do and what adults allow.
Yeah, that tension.
Yeah, tension.
And that's part of it, isn't it?
It is. But what I find so inspiring about Professor Orm's work is, he really highlights that children
Yeah.
were not just passive figures. They were
Shaping their own experience.
shaping their own experience.
Within those constraints, of course,
Right.
of their time.
Yeah. It's been fascinating, really,
Lots.
to sort of delve into this world with you.
And we've only just begun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What stood out to you the most? Was it the games,
I think for me, it's that reminder that childhood,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the era, it's a time of wonder and resilience, and that, that constant urge to learn and explore.
Yeah. We may not face the same, challenge
Let's
that
agree, yeah.
Tudor children did,
Mm,
but their stories, I think, offer some valuable insights
they do.
into just the nature
Of childhood.
of childhood itself.
Yeah.
And we'll delve deeper, won't we, in part 2?
We will. We've got much more to uncover.
We do.
So stay tuned for that. We'll explore their work, their beliefs, their unique perspectives.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations like this one.
Yes, subscribe.
See you next time.
See you then.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Tudor children. Before we move on, I wanted to circle back to something we were talking about earlier, that
Mhm.
whole mini adults thing.
Right.
This idea that Tudor children were just tiny versions of their parents, no real childhood of their own. Professor Orm, he really pushes back against that.
He does. And it's something that, I think a lot of people kind of assume about the past.
Mhm. Right. It's just this common misconception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That childhood as we know it didn't really exist back then.
Exactly. And one of the points Professor Orm makes is that even when children were working, right, alongside adults, their tasks were usually
Appropriate to
their age and abilities.
their-
It wasn't about doing exactly the same work as a grown man, but more about contributing to the family in a way that made sense.
Right, learning those practical skills.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Tudor England, largely agrarian.
Right. So children would naturally be involved
in the farm work.
Yeah, yeah. Tending livestock, gathering firewood, helping in the family workshop, things like that.
It's funny. Professor Orm actually mentions boys taking geese to the common or leading horses.
Oh, yeah.
While their fathers were plowing.
Yeah, it really paints a different picture.
It does.
Than just this grim image of child labor.
Right, exactly.
Of course, there were less pleasant jobs, too.
Birds scaring, for instance. Imagine that all day long out in the fields.
But still.
But even those experiences, I think, helped children develop a sense of responsibility, yeah, and their role in the family.
It's so different from today, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where children are often kind of shielded from work altogether.
Very different. It makes you wonder, about
how it shaped them.
Yeah. Did it instill a different sense of self-reliance, maybe? Practical skills? Who knows?
Yeah. Interesting to think about.
It is. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about something I think that's often overlooked when we think about Tudor children, their spiritual lives.
It's easy to forget how central, religion was back then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't just about going to church on Sunday.
Right.
It was woven into the fabric of their lives.
Every aspect.
Every aspect. Right. Imagine, a world where church attendance was not just expected, but a central part of community life.
The social hub.
Yeah, the social hub. It's where you learned about social hierarchies, where you heard news, even where you found entertainment.
I'm trying to picture it, through the eyes of a child.
Right.
All those sights, sounds, the smells.
Yeah, and
those long sermons.
Oh, those sermons.
Challenging for anyone, I think.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It's tempting to imagine those children fidgeting, daydreaming through it all. But Professor Orm suggests they might have been more engaged than we give them credit for.
Really? Why is that?
Well, think about it. For many Tudor children, the Bible and the stories and teachings in it, that was their main source of knowledge about the world.
Right.
Creation, morality, history, even science, all came through a religious lens.
So those sermons weren't just, these abstract ideas.
No, they were a way of understanding the universe.
Understanding their place in it.
Exactly. And then beyond the formal teachings, right, you had all these rituals and traditions.
Right, that really brought it to life.
That brought it to life. Those processions, the hymns, those religious plays they'd perform.
So much more immersive.
It must have been.
Than what many of us experience today.
Right. I mean, it just makes you wonder how all of that shaped their worldview.
Right. Their sense of right and wrong,
Yeah, their understanding of community.
And those are really the questions, aren't they? They're the heart of Professor Orm's work.
He's asking us to see Tudor children not just as passive recipients of religious teaching, but as active participants, questioning, interpreting, even challenging those beliefs.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
It is, isn't it? Shows that even in a society with, pretty strict religious norms, children still found ways to engage with faith on their own terms.
Their own terms.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And speaking of engaging on their own terms, let's talk about, playtime.
Okay.
Because we've talked about work, we've talked about religion, but Professor Orm reminds us that
kids will be kids.
Kids will be kids. And Tudor children,
they were no exception.
They found ways to have fun.
They did.
And what I love about Professor Orm's research is, he really brings those moments to life.
He does.
He paints such vivid pictures of what it was like to be a child playing in Tudor England.
And a lot of that comes from the actual objects they played with.
Right, the archaeological digs.
The digs, especially along the Thames, they've uncovered so much.
Amazing. We talked about those, those beautiful metal toys.
Right, the knights.
The knights.
The miniature kitchenware.
But those cupboards.
Oh, those cupboards.
I find them fascinating.
They are amazing, aren't they?
I mean, they're these tiny replicas.
Yeah.
Of the grand cabinets.
Yeah, those big display cabinets.
You'd find in wealthy homes.
It really does suggest, doesn't it, that even in their play, they were
reflecting the adult world.
Mirroring that world around them.
Around them, yeah. And, of course, it wasn't all fancy metal objects.
Oh.
They were pretty resourceful, right? Turning everyday things.
Oh, they were masters of that. Cherry stones into marbles.
Right.
Lace ends, those little bits called haglets. they use those as currency.
So clever.
It really shows you that, play is about imagination.
Yeah, it's not about...
Not about having the most expensive thing.
Not about the stuff.
No.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see, which games have really stuck around.
Right.
I mean, drafts, chess, card games.
Amazing, isn't it?
Like, can you imagine those children sitting around?
Gathered around a table.
Just like we do today.
Lost in a game.
It's really remarkable.
It is.
That connection.
Yeah. Although I think with card games, not all adults were thrilled about it.
Oh, why not?
Well, some worried that it would lead to, gambling.
Oh.
And other vices.
Seen as a bit too...
a bit too risky.
Risky.
Corrupting.
Something, right. The tension. That tension, it's still there.
Yeah. Between what adults allow.
And what kids want to do.
Yeah.
It's like a constant, isn't it?
Yeah, that push and pull.
That push and pull.
Part of growing up, I guess.
It is. But what I really appreciate about Professor Orm's work is that he shows us that children weren't just passive figures. They
had agency.
They had agency. Yeah, they were
shaping their experience.
Shaping their own experience.
Within the constraints, of course,
right.
of Tudor England,
yeah,
but still they had a voice.
They did. Welcome back to our deep dive. It's so easy to get caught up in the hardships.
Right.
When we think about the past.
Mm-hmm.
But Professor Orm really, he reminds us that children, no matter what, they'll find ways
to have fun.
Kids
will be kids.
Kids will be kids. And Tudor children, they were no different.
They were not. They were just as imaginative and playful.
And what I love about his research is, he really brings those moments of play to life.
He does.
Like he can almost picture those Tudor children running around playing games.
And a lot of that comes from the actual objects that have been found.
Right, the archaeological digs.
The digs, yeah, they've uncovered so much.
Especially along the Thames.
Along the Thames, it's amazing.
It is. We talked about, those beautiful metal toys.
The knights.
The little
kitchenware.
But those cupboards.
Oh, those cupboards.
They're just so, I don't know.
They're incredible, aren't they?
They're fascinating, those tiny replicas.
Yeah. Of those grand cabinets.
The ones you'd see in wealthy homes.
Exactly.
For displaying.
I know. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
That even in their play, they were kind of reflecting the mirroring. Yeah, that world around them.
The adult world.
Yeah, the adult world.
Yeah. But of course, not all toys were so...
elaborate
and fancy, right? I mean, they were pretty resourceful.
You were really good at that, weren't they? Turning everyday items into games and toys.
Yeah, like cherry stones as marbles.
Right, or those lace ends, they called them haglets.
Yeah.
Using those as currency in their games.
I love that. It's such a great reminder, that play isn't about...
the stuff.
The stuff, yeah. It's about the imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, it's just amazing to see, I think, which games have really stood the test of time.
Right. Like drafts, chess.
Card games.
Amazing, isn't it?
It is. Can you imagine those children?
Yeah, huddled around a table.
Just like we do today.
I know. Lost in a game.
It's a real connection, isn't it?
It is to the past, to those who came before us. Although, card games weren't always viewed so positively.
Oh, no.
No. Some adults back then, they worried about, the slippery slope to gambling.
Oh, right. Okay.
And other vices.
Seen as a bit
too risky.
Too risky for young minds.
Yeah. A corrupting influence.
It's funny how those concerns sort of transcend time, don't they?
They really do. I mean, it's that age-old... I guess
tension,
yeah, that tension
between what kids want to do
and what adults think is best for them.
It's a constant, isn't it?
That seems to be, yeah.
It does. But what I really appreciate about Professor Orm's work is, he doesn't present children as these passive figures. He really emphasizes that.
They were shaping their own experiences.
Yeah,
even within, of course.
Within the limits, right?
Within the limitations, the constraints of Tudor society.
Of Tudor England.
But they had agency.
They did. It's been a fascinating journey, really, exploring the world of Tudor children.
It really has. What about for you? What stood out the most?
I think for me, it's that reminder that childhood really is a time of wonder and resilience and just that urge to learn and explore.
Absolutely.
You know, it's universal.
It is.
It transcends time.
And we may not face the same challenges as Tudor children.
Right.
But I think their stories offer
Valuable insight.
valuable insights into what it means to be a child in any era.
In any era. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of Tudor children. We hope you've enjoyed this journey back in time.
I hope so.
With us. And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating explorations like this one.
Yes, subscribe.
See you next time.
See you then.